Ancient Egypt. Is there any other time and place on Earth more mysterious and intriguing? These are some of the most astonishing discoveries made beneath the sands. The incredible ancient Egyptian discoveries scientists found buried underground. We've talked about an incredible discovery archaeologist Kathleen Martinez made a couple years back, the possible location of Cleopatra's tomb. Well, I have an update on this, but before we get into that, here's a recap. Kathleen Martinez has been searching for Cleopatra's tomb since 2005, and in 2022 she started getting onto something big. She believed she may have finally discovered the tunnel that leads to it. The tunnel was found beneath the temple ruins of Taposiris Magna, a site built around 280 BCE that's dedicated to the gods Osiris and Isis. The tunnel sits about 42.5 feet underground, carved into the sandstone, but parts of this tunnel have been submerged in water, of course making it a bit more of a challenge to explore. At Taposiris Magna, the archaeological team has already uncovered some fascinating artifacts, sculptures of Isis, coins featuring Cleopatra and Alexander the Great, and even an entire burial ground filled with mummies. But the next step was for the team to, of course, investigate the nearby Mediterranean Sea, where part of the tunnel is submerged. But let's get on to this update. Martinez needed permission from the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities to carry out the next step of her investigation, but she needed a specific artifact to back up her theory that this temple was dedicated to the goddess Isis, a goddess Cleopatra famously claimed to be the reincarnation of. The item she was looking for is called a foundation plate, inscribed with important details about when and why the temple was built. Archaeological missions had been searching for this plate since the 1800s, but they all came up empty-handed. That is until Dr. Martinez. She found the foundation plate she was looking for, which reads, "The king of high and low Egypt, Ptolemy V lives forever, beloved by Isis." This plate finally proved that the temple was indeed dedicated to the goddess. Now, to help with her underwater search, she reached out to Robert Ballard, the diver who found the Titanic, and now with the support from the Egyptian government, her expedition was a go. During their exploration in submerged Alexandria, the team found structures standing 3 meters tall, and they did not look like natural formations. They also uncovered basalt, the same material used in statues from the first temple, confirming these structures were made by humans. More than 5 other points of interest were also identified and are set to be excavated in the next permit season, some even 10 kilometers out from the coast. Dr. Martinez is convinced that if Alexandria is underwater, then Cleopatra's temple may be as well. There will definitely be more updates to come. The Valley of the Golden Mummies is an amazing burial site found in Egypt's western desert. It dates back to the Greco-Roman period and was discovered in 1996 by archaeologist Zahi Hawass and his team. They uncovered around 250 mummies over several seasons, but Hawass later estimated that there could be more than 10,000 mummies buried in this area. When the team first found these mummies, many were in surprisingly good condition too. They had a variety of decorating styles, but the researchers identified 4 main ones. The first style featured a gilded mask covering the face, along with a gilded waistcoat that depicted different gods and goddesses. About 60 of the mummies were adorned like this. The second style was covered with courtenage, which is a type of material made from layers of linen and plaster. These mummies displayed scenes of gods, including Anubis, who is known as the god of the dead. The third style didn't have any gold or fancy decorations, but was instead placed inside a pottery coffin shaped like a person, known as an anthropoid. The fourth style was simply wrapped in linen. Each mummy was buried with a number of artifacts like jewelry, pottery for food, wine jars, and coins. This next story is, it's always been one of my favorites. It sounds completely made up. It's gonna sound like the Egyptian version of the Goonies, but this is actually a real thing that happened, and yeah, I just love this news story. So the media didn't release the guy's full name. He was simply referred to as Nagy. But Nagy was digging in his backyard one day in 2015 when he stumbled on this tunnel. Now, before I even say where the tunnel leads, let me just say, finding a tunnel in your backyard would just be incredibly cool no matter what. Like, I'd be calling my friends over, we'd be getting an adventure going, I'd buy an Indiana Jones hat, the whole 9 yards. But let's get to where this tunnel actually led. The tunnel, right in this guy's backyard, led to Khufu Pyramid, one of the 3 pyramids that make up the Giza Pyramid Complex. It's also one of the largest and oldest. Now, how insane is that? First of all, why was he digging? Who just goes digging in their backyard? If I was digging in my backyard, I'd find some worms. Probably that would be about it. This guy randomly decides to dig one day and finds a tunnel leading to the Great Pyramid. He does live in Egypt, but still, what are the chances of this? The tunnel was about 33 feet beneath his house and is made of stone blocks. Now, he didn't go into this tunnel and make his way to the Great Pyramid and find this out for himself. That would have been way cooler, but probably not the best idea to just go into an unknown tunnel buried in your backyard. Instead, he contacted authorities and archaeologists were sent to his yard who made the discovery. And what's even crazier is that this tunnel was actually something archaeologists have been seeking out for a long time. It was written about, but had never actually been found until then. In 2011, archaeologists in the ancient capital city of Avaris discovered a series of severed hands buried in the ground. The 12 severed hands dated back to around 1500 BCE and were found in pits just outside the walls of a palace. In one pit, 8 hands were found grouped together, while the others were in a nearby pit only about 3 feet away. Interestingly, both pits would have been visible from the throne room of the palace, meaning they might have been very important trophies for the rulers. Researcher Julia Greski from the German Archaeological Institute noted that Egyptian texts mention a practice called gold of honor. This involved presenting the hands of slain enemies to the pharaoh in exchange for gold jewelry, like necklaces or pendants. Interestingly, there were no cut marks on these bones. They'd been removed very carefully, possibly as part of a ritual. The tendons that connected the hands to the arms were likely severed after death and after rigor mortis had passed. But why take your enemy's hands as trophies? Well, hands were very symbolically important to the ancient Egyptians, representing power and agency. On top of that, without your hands, you can't really wield a weapon, so I guess it makes sense. According to ancient Egyptian beliefs, losing a hand would prevent you from entering the afterlife as well. So considering that, hands would have been pretty significant war trophies. The catacombs of Kom el Shoqafa just look incredible. I would absolutely love to explore this place. Looks like something straight out of Zelda. They're actually considered one of these 7 wonders of the Middle Ages. It's a necropolis made up of a series of tombs, statues, and artifacts with a blend of Egyptian, Greek, and Roman influence. Discovered in 1900, a donkey accidentally fell into this shaft, and that's how this place was found. That's crazy. These catacombs date back to the 2nd century CE, during the age of the Antonine emperors. They were used as burial chambers from the 2nd to the 4th centuries. The catacombs are made up of 3 levels that were tunneled into solid rock. The 3rd level was completely underwater until more recent restorations. And inside the catacombs is a funeral banquet hall where family and friends would have gathered on stone couches during burials. The name Kom el Shoqafa means mound of shards, and it comes from the many broken pottery shards found in the area. Visitors would bring food and wine to the tombs, and instead of carrying the empty jars back home, they'd break them and leave the pieces behind. When this site was discovered, heaps of these broken plates were found. Among all the fascinating finds is the Hall of Caracalla, which contains the bones of horses that were buried there for Emperor Caracalla in 215 CE. As I mentioned before, there's this blend of styles here. On the walls of the catacombs are carvings, some blending in Greek and Roman influences. For example, there are scenes depicting the Egyptian god Anubis, but dressed in Roman-style clothing. The tomb chamber features 3 massive stone sarcophagi, which are super intricate. I mean, it just looks like the type of place you could spend years exploring, and you'd always find something new to look at. The Tomb of Nefertari is a beautiful burial site in Egypt's Valley of the Queens. It was discovered in 1904 by Ernesto Schiaparelli, who is the director of the Egyptian Museum in Turin. Nefertari, whose name means beautiful companion, was the favorite wife of Pharaoh Ramses II, and he made sure everyone knew it. He called her the one for whom the sun shines, and even built a temple in her honor. The paintings in the tomb reveal a lot about Nefertari's life and the Egyptian beliefs surrounding death. One famous image shows her playing a game called Senet, showing the importance of games in her culture. There's also a scene of her meeting Thoth, the god of writing, meaning she may have been literate. The wall art also shows scenes from the Book of the Dead detailing rituals and tests Nefertari would face in the afterlife. After this discovery, it became clear that the tomb had suffered from looting, unfortunately. The treasures, including Nefertari's sarcophagus and mummy, were gone, but remnants of her knees were found, oddly enough, and about 2/3 of its wall paintings still remain, fortunately. The tomb has also suffered water damage, unfortunately, and mold thanks to humidity. In 1986, there was a restoration project to preserve the paintings, and it was completed in 1992. Thonis-Heracleion was an ancient Egyptian city that ended up at the bottom of the sea. It was located near the mouth of the Nile River and was one of the most important cities in ancient Egypt at one point, a thriving port city during the time of the pharaohs, a center for trade with Greece and other Mediterranean countries, and it played a big role in the Egyptian economy. The city was known for its grand temples, the statues dedicated to various gods and goddesses. We don't know exactly why it sank, but there were likely natural disasters like earthquakes and rising sea levels, which led to it gradually sinking underwater. For centuries, Thonis was lost and forgotten until underwater archaeologists rediscovered it in 2000, with divers finding well-preserved artifacts like statues, pottery, and religious objects. With all of that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.